So we don't have to live like that. And of course, in my book, I outline the situation as it exists and how it can change. And for those of you who want to have more information, we have a table at the back. Mary Elena Repo is sitting at the back, who has been the co-organizer with me of Citizens Concerned About Free Trade since the very beginning, and she bought a whole table of material. My website, of course, is just davidorchard.com if you want to get some information. There's a lot of articles. And we have contact sheets that will circulate if you want to. We don't do a lot of mail-outs or anything, but if you want to be on our list, if I'm speaking at any time, just leave us your name and number. We don't sell those lists or anything, but we'd be able to let you know if I'm coming through Prince Albert. But I want to look at a couple of other alternatives. Norway, again, it's another country richly endowed with energy, but it refuses to spend any of the money that it gets from the sale of its oil and gas into the economy. And it all goes into a heritage account, an investment account. So, because they feel it would be inflationary and not right if they took the revenues from one-time sale of non-renewable resources and spent them. So they have this interesting concept that they put it all into this heritage account, which now has over $300 billion in it. And they use that to invest so that the people of Norway will have that when the oil and gas runs out. And in spite of that, Norway has achieved the highest standard of living in the world. They have passed Canada on the UN's list of best countries in the world in which to live. And it's a fascinating place. I had a chance to visit it a few years ago and observe this kind of standard of living and the tuition fees that are so low and the free health and dental care, all of the things that they've given to their people, but they don't spend their resource revenue. Contrast this with Alberta, with its puny little heritage fund of, around $12 billion, which hasn't increased at all in the last 15 years, and all of the problems that are coming out of the development that's going on in the way it's being done in oil and gas. Canada is a cold country. What's going to be left for us when we ship all of this oil and gas out of the country? Neither coal nor uranium are renewable either, and both of these resources pose significant risks, especially uranium, with the dangers involved and the unsolved and so far intractable problem of the spent fuel or nuclear waste. Electricity. Unlike Canada's oil and gas, which is largely foreign owned, much of our electricity production is publicly owned. Almost three-quarters of our electricity is hydropower, which carries an environmental price tag as well, but which is renewable. Yet as of today, each provincial utility grid is tied more closely to the U.S. states to the south of us than to the provinces next door. So, for example, when Ontario had its blackout a few years ago, remember the whole province was blacked out, but the lights across the river in Hull, just across the Ottawa River, were burning because Quebec had lots of electricity and they're trying to sell it into the United States, but Ontario doesn't even have a functioning link into its next door province because it's locked into the U.S. grid to the south of them. And almost each of the provincial utilities are the same way. They're linked closer to the U.S. grid to the south than they are east and west. And Diefenbaker tried to, in the 1950s, create a national energy grid so that we would have our provinces linked east and west for electricity, but squabbling through provincial jurisdiction killed the project. So we still don't have one today. So the country is crying out for a rational national energy policy. And in oil and gas, we need a pipeline taking our western resource right through to the Maritimes. And in electricity, we need to have a national grid, and then that would be able to rationalize our production. Right now, we've got Ontario looking at building huge, expensive, new nuclear power plants, and we've got Quebec next door trying to peddle their energy down into the United States. We've got Newfoundland trying to sell its energy to the United States. We've got some provinces short, and yet we don't have this basic link-up. If we had a national east-west electricity power line, we could link the provinces that need their energy, with Newfoundland, with Quebec, with BC, with the provinces, with Manitoba, with the provinces that are trying to export it. But this is going to require a bit of political will to do, but the needs of the country could be looked after, and it would also create a kind of a national feeling in the country that we're connected together, we're linked up to each other, instead of right now our eyes turned straight south rather than to our next door neighbors. And renewable energy. I want to talk just very briefly to the immense and exciting possibilities of virtually unlimited and constantly self-renewing and cheap sources of power that are out there, but that are not being researched anywhere near to the extent that they should be. Tidal power, for example. The Bay of Fundy has a tremendous source alone, just in that one area, of power that could be harnessed and used. It's constantly reoccurring. River-run turbines. We've got rivers, our country that's full of rivers. The turbines placed in the river, you don't have to dam the river, but as long as the river flows, the turbine will turn. These are two virtually inexhaustible and virtually untapped sources of power. The wind and the sun, especially here on the prairies, are another source of inexhaustible energy. Denmark has become a world leader in wind power, a little country which generates a sizable portion of its entire energy needs through wind. We've got lots of wind in this province, there's lots of wind all across Canada, and we could be using that as a source of energy. But as a matter of policy, we need to direct research dollars to developing these renewable and untapped sources of power, so we get off this issue of burning fossil fuels. These fuels are going to run out at some point, and the question is, are we going to go crashing down with them? If we don't prepare ourselves for the weaning ourselves off these fuels, we could face a very serious problem, in addition to all of the environmental problems that are being caused. But there are sources of energy, we need to study and develop them, that don't damage the environment and will be sustainable and renewable. So the sources we need are all there. What we've suffered from is an unforgivable lack of political will. And the time is upon us when we will have no choice. We either develop the alternatives to these, the destructive path we're on, or we're going to face serious, serious problems. So I want to thank, in closing, I want to thank all of you for your work and your studies, and urge you to continue to take these exciting possibilities deeper and further, so that our country, instead of becoming known around the world as a rogue nation, a dirty energy polluter, which we're increasingly being seen as, we can become known for a positive, clean energy potential. We've got everything there that we need. You know, people say, oh, we're too small, we're just this little country, how could we ever stand on our own 2 feet? We're a huge country. We're the second largest nation on the face of the earth. We've got resources that most countries don't come close to having. At 30 million people, we have more population than most countries in the world.